Okay, thanks for your patience. Go ahead, Diana.
Okay, hello and good evening. Again, thank you all for being here. As I had just mentioned, we've been working over the past few months on our reopening plans, and of course with a focus on our high need students, including our students with disabilities. So what I plan to do is go through a series of questions that I have recently received, as well as an overview of what our plan looks like for special education. And then, of course, we will answer any additional questions that you may have. Our team is fully intact and here to support you. Our building chairs, Linda Roth, Valerie Collinger, Renee Jones-Vaughns, and our added district coordinator, Katie McCourt. So at any point after tonight's forum, you can reach out to myself or any one of us with any additional questions that you may have specifically related to your child. So I have my bullet points set up in different components. So I'm going to start with the specialized instructional services, basically meaning your classroom instructional services. So that includes special class settings in district, resource room programs, and integrated co-taught. If your child is recommended for a 15-1-1 or 12-1 to 3-1 special class setting, they are scheduled to attend school 5 days in person. So that would be daily. If your child is recommended for a combination of integrated co-taught, but may have periods of special class recommendations for a particular subject area, then they also will attend class daily so that they can receive those services on a daily basis. Integrated co-taught students will attend school with their cohorts, with their designated cohorts. So that will be at the K through 6 level, the 2 days per week with the alternating Mondays. And for secondary students, it will be one time per week. We will be using a multitude of online learning platforms for the students, whether it be Newsela, Raz Kids, ST Math, Flipgrid, Boom Cards. There are, an abundance of resources out there that we'll be working with the teachers on and looking at using depending on the needs of students. Progress monitoring of IEP goals will be completed via a combination of in-person and remotely, depending on the student's situation. But progress monitoring of IEP goals will be in accordance with the student's IEP schedule, and that does look slightly different for all students depending on what is on their IEP. In terms of related services, we received several questions about related services and how those supports will be provided. I want to start by sharing that there are a multitude of factors that impact related service schedules under regular, normal circumstances. That includes the students' schedules, their time in their core subject areas. We can't pull from lunch or physical education. We do our best not to pull from core areas such as math and ELA. And in conjunction with that, the related service providers have other factors that they have to consider. We are making every effort to construct schedules so that students who receive services in groups will receive them in static groups, so that there isn't too much crossing between classes. However, we can't guarantee that that will be possible in all situations. The related service providers will be working on this when they return next week, so we'll have more information on exactly what those schedules look like at the beginning of the school year. All K-6 related services will be provided in person to the best extent possible because our K-6 students will be attending school either 2 or 3 days per week. There may be some situations in which there might be a combination that they would need a remote session in addition to in-person sessions, but for the most part, we're looking at providing them in person. At the secondary level, related services will be provided via a combination of in-person or remotely, except for our students that are attending school daily. If your child is attending school daily, then they will receive their related services in school while they're in school five days per week. The scheduling of in-person or related in-person or remote sessions will take into consideration the individual needs of the student. During related service sessions, we've put some parameters in place. If there's desk work or table work involved, we've been looking at spaces and determining whether or not related services need to be provided in alternate spaces where social distancing can be better maintained. Some of our current offices that our providers use are small in size. They're generally fine for individual sessions. If they are individual sessions, we are also providing the Lexan desk shields or the desk barriers in either situation, whether it be provided in an alternate space or in the provider's office. For students that are receiving speech therapy, we've secured clear masks for the speech therapists, and we also have face shields to provide for them for students that need to work on articulation skills or oral motor skills in which the structure of the mouth needs to be visible during therapy. And the clear masks can also be provided to the students if needed. The sharing of materials during related service sessions will be limited, and individual supplies for students will be maintained as necessary. And we will also be providing sanitizing spray and wipes for the providers for in-between sessions. For students whose IEP designation is for in-class services, for push-in services, then the provider will push into the child's classroom to receive those in-class services. With respect to aids, whether your child has a recommendation for a one-to-one or a shared aid support will be provided as indicated on your child's IEP. Social distancing will be maintained whenever possible. However, typically the need for a shared or an individual aid necessitates the need for closer adult proximity and support throughout the school day and throughout instructional periods. Under the New York State Department of Health guidance, again, we will try to maintain social distancing as best as possible. However, if a student does need closer intervention or support, then that can be, that may not be maintained at all times, depending on what the student may need. For students that may present with some behavior challenges and behavior difficulties, our process is to always use proactive measures to respond to and identify triggers that may be causing the behavior, or to de-escalate frustration before it gets into a situation that's more difficult for the child to handle. In the event that a student presents with a behavior that becomes a danger to themselves or others, then we would have to employ our crisis intervention strategies, which would require closer proximity to mitigate the behavior issue. This is really to ensure the safety for all students and staff, and as per our usual procedures, parents will be notified if anything of that nature should occur or escalate to that degree. Reevaluations every 3 years. As you know, students in special education are required to undergo a reevaluation process that requires standardized testing, in-person standardized testing with a school psychologist, usually a special education teacher, sometimes a speech therapist, an occupational therapist. Those will be scheduled in person as per your child's schedule if they are due this year, and those schedules will be arranged by the individual providers just as they would under normal circumstances. In the event that schools close at some point, or we have to transition to a fully remote model and your child falls into the reevaluation category, then my office will be in contact with you to determine if there are any components of that reevaluation that can be completed remotely. If that is the case, then we will be requesting additional consent to complete the evaluation remotely. So we will be in contact if that were the case. And I've received many questions about CSC meetings. We've all become very accustomed to Zoom and holding our meetings this way. For now, our plan is to proceed with any CSE meetings via Zoom. I'm not sure when that will be lifted or when that will change, but our meetings will continue to be held via Zoom or the Google Meet platforms or teleconference, depending on the parent's preference. You will still receive a formal notification about your child's CSE meeting, and on that invitation, it will indicate that the meeting will be held via that platform. So Jim, those were just some of the general items that had come up over the past few weeks that I wanted to start off with. So, you know, if we want to.
That's a great start. I'm going to ask that. I see it's started already, but please don't hesitate to put questions either not addressed or elaborating on what Diana just said. Place those questions in the chat. I do want to acknowledge, first of all, for those that haven't been on one of these platforms before, we've been doing this for quite a while, and it's really helping both parents and staff. I do want to mention that I'm looking through the folks on tonight. There are a lot of staff members on, and I have to tell you, your kids are in really, really good hands. Our folks are doing everything they can to make sure that they understand what's safe, what's responsible, and how we're going to move forward here. I'm looking right at Renee Vaughns. I know Valerie Collinger is on, Linda Roth is on. There are a large quantity of special education teachers on tonight. There are also general ed teachers on tonight who may be watching this for the third or fourth time in terms of just the general forum. I just want to thank all these folks, because one of the things that I don't worry about is the care that these folks have for your kids and for our families in Huntington. And that is a source of not only pride, but just relief for me, because I know we're in this together, and I'm asking, of course, for the continued partnership from those in the community. This is not easy on any of us, and I understand that there are a lot of needs to be addressed here, and we are going to do our very best to address every one of them continuously in the manner that these kids deserve. So on that note, I'm going to get right into the questions, and Diana, a lot of these are going to go in your direction here. But the first, asking for clarification on something you said, can you please define what static groups will mean for related services?
So static groupings mean that we will try to group kids that are in the same classroom. So kids that are present attending school in the same special class or ICT class.
All right, so that kind of goes in line with our cohort process here. We're trying to prevent as much, I've used it before, forgive me, cross-contamination of cohorts until this virus starts to move its way out of here. And it may take some time, but if we have these kids in small groups that are always around each other, there is much less risk of something from another group infecting that group, and it does allow a little bit more comfort on the staff side with respect to who they're working with on a daily basis. Okay, so moving right down the line here, I'm going to go in order of the time that they were input. Will the kids who used to receive one-on-one speech therapy and occupational therapy at home or at a facility, not the school, will it still be held in person?
Is that for a CPSE student, for a preschool student?
It looks like it's for a child who did receive speech, OT in person as opposed to virtually. Will it still be held in person, possibly on days that that child is not in school?
So services can be provided in person when the child is in school. If they are scheduled to go to a center for their services, which is typically for our preschool students, that depends on the center's plans, what their reopening plans are. Most are providing in-person services at this point, but I would ask that you contact myself or Renee Jones-Vaughns about that specifically.
And I think that's how I read that as well. There will be some questions that need to be asked individually that we may not be able to address in a group forum like this that specifically relate to a service that your child or children have received. And I think that we're here, so please don't hesitate to pick up the phone or drop Diana, Linda, Renee, Valerie an email, and we'll get to the bottom of it and help you work through it. Okay, this relates to an integrated setting. How will students in integrated settings work with their special education teachers when they are remote?
Mm-hmm. So there will be the live stream in the classroom, and we will be working with the teachers to determine if students need small group instruction during a particular period or a breakout session with the special ed teacher just like in an integrated class, it's common to break the class down into smaller groups, to employ the models of co-teaching, parallel teaching, station teaching. While that will be more difficult in a virtual format, you know, there should be opportunities for interaction for the student directly with their special ed teacher during those periods.
And I have to say, a co-teaching model is just that. Teachers are co-teaching. So there's no special education teacher does not own one group of students versus the general education teacher owning the other group of students. They co-teach the class. I'm going to speak generically here. I think in this hybrid situation, an integrated co-taught setting is a positive. I'm going to leave it at that, and you can sort of understand how it would work in a positive manner, I hope. Okay. I think this is a similar question. How will special education teachers support students in the ICT class remotely? So that was just asked. You're very welcome. How will small group instruction be provided on days when the child does not attend school? Sort of related.
Yeah. So if it's a resource room program, then your child would follow their regular schedule. So if they are scheduled to receive resource room 3rd period, 4th period, 8th period, and they are not in person, then they would log on with their teacher just as they would for any other class period that they're not in attendance at school.
Thank you.
And just back to the question about supporting students remotely, I just want to add that accommodations, management needs, supplementary aids and services that are on your child's IEP can continue to be provided virtually. Some of the items that are easier, for lack of a better word, to provide virtually are extended time on assignments, extended time on tests, prompting and redirection, breaking down of information for students. If students need checklists or copies of notes, those are some of the items, you know, that are commonly found on IEPs for students for various reasons. But all of those items we will continue to provide. There are some that are really designed for provision in a classroom setting as opposed to a home environment. But again, under the guidance, we're providing everything that we can to the best extent possible and as appropriate for each student and their individual circumstance.
And if a question is not answered, if it's misinterpreted or not answered as thoroughly as you would have liked, please don't hesitate to go back to the chat and put in a supplemental question. That would be certainly helpful. Okay, Diane, I'll let you start this. Will the aides be receiving additional training regarding one-to-one assistance and shared assistance for these students?
We will provide training for the aides. We usually provide crisis prevention intervention. They do work closely with our mental health team and our psychologists and teachers. They work under the direction of the teachers in providing support for students and how they need to be prompted or assisted. If, you know, we always provide support in a least to most manner when there is aid support, meaning that we start with the lowest level of prompting, visual, verbal, gestural, before we move to hand-over-hand assistance or more intensive support. But yes, it is part of our process to provide training and support for our aides.
And please understand that one of the major focal points, particularly at the beginning of the year, throughout the year, but certainly at the beginning, is helping these young people reassimilate, reacclimate to the school setting. Conversations, just making these kids feel comfortable. It's been traumatic. There's been months of time in between. There's been some learning loss that has to be addressed, but first and foremost, we need to reacclimate these young people into the school setting so that they feel comfortable. And it's not one person, it's administrators, it's teachers. I'm looking at student support staff members, our social workers, psychologists, aides, teaching assistants, monitors. Everybody in this building is going to be in these buildings. We're going to be on the same page because we've been through, albeit maybe in different ways than individual families that we're speaking with tonight. We've all been through the same type of situation here, and we all know we need to support each other. So the training is a part of the process. Okay, how will school drop-off work? How is school drop-off going to work? Will the parent bring the child into school? Will there be staff to meet the children at the cars? And I'll start this, Diane, and feel free to finish it. We do need to limit the number of visitors that enter our buildings. So we're going to be looking for processes that don't have parents entering the schools unless there is an essential reason for that to happen, which means that staff members, masked, socially distanced, would have to come out to greet and meet and greet and walk the child into the building. There will be multiple entrances at most of our buildings. I don't know if I mentioned this. I didn't mention it tonight, but I have mentioned it on other nights. Students and staff will have to walk through thermal infrared temperature scanners. That may be uncomfortable for some of the kids. We're going to have to desensitize them to that. And we're also going to be asking that before you put these kids on a bus each day, that you fill out a daily questionnaire, that we're working to finalize arrangements to have an app in your hands before school starts. I'm going to emphasize something I've shared every night. Please, we need your help here. If you wake up in the morning and your child does not feel well, do not put them on the bus. Do not bring them to school. There is no reward for perfect attendance. You must keep them home, and that is something we're going to continue to reinforce for the duration of this time period. But that is something you really need to understand before this year begins. All right, Diane, you want to talk any further about the drop-off process?
No, I mean,
As it
some
relates
of that is dependent on the different buildings and their procedures, but as Mr. Polanski noted, there, especially for our youngsters, there will be a process in place for staff to greet drop-off students and escort them into the building, much like we did over the summer for anyone that was familiar with that process in our extended school year program.
Okay, this is half a question. If we need to restrain a student where social distancing cannot take place, it's not a full question, but can you address a situation like that, Diana? Behavior
Well,
intervention.
if any of the CPI strategies need to be employed to ensure the safety of a student and or a staff member, then the student's safety, physically, so that they don't hurt themselves, has to take precedent over that social distancing piece. And that's in accordance with the Department of Health guidance, in that there are students in which social distancing cannot be maintained at all times. Now, restraining students or using physical interventions is not something that we use frequently, and nor do we employ it frequently. It is under extreme circumstances, and in fact, done very infrequently. That's not to say there isn't hand-over-hand assistance or physical support or prompting, but in terms of restraining students, that is done through our CPI training program, and that has to be followed very, very strictly. The protocol has to be followed very, very strictly for that. Again, I mentioned it at the beginning. I just want to reiterate that, the goal is to identify a frequent reinforcement schedule, what is reinforcing for students, working with families and students to know what students respond to, what they're motivated by, to gain an understanding of what their triggers are, what upsets them, what may frustrate them, so that we can be proactive and avoid those situations, de-escalate them before they occur. We do have a data tracking process in place for students that have formalized behavior intervention plans. The environment plays a big role in that, working with the families, working together as a team, making sure that we're using consistent language, consistent approaches, and consistent strategies is really the key, and really is the basis of of a positive behavioral intervention and support over restraint or physical intervention or anything like that.
It's about getting to know our kids from top to bottom, and again, we have the folks here to do that. Okay, Diana, I believe we have this taken care of. Can a special education teacher be provided with clear masks if we have a student with significant speech language or hearing difficulties?
Yes, we have secured the clear masks and the face shields as well. They will both need to be worn. The clear mask is sufficient, but we do have clear face shields also if necessary. Okay.
Just to elaborate on something that was mentioned before, and this is probably a high school question or a middle school question based on the number of days mentioned, during 4 days a week of distance learning, how will the students engage with their special education teachers? How exactly will kids in an inclusion class, integrated co-taught setting, receive support?
So again, that's going to have to be determined to some degree by the integrated co-taught team and what the structure of that classroom is. But teachers should be setting time aside for, like Mr. Polanski said, they're teaching the class collectively. It's not, these are my kids, these are your kids. They're team teaching all of the students in that class, and both teachers should have an opportunity for direct contact time with different groups of students, all the students teaching together. And that to some degree has to be planned and determined by that co-teaching team.
And again, lines of communication should remain open. So if you feel like there is something else that can be done to support your child by either the general education or the special education teacher, or more exactly the combination of the two of them, please don't hesitate, reach out. Keep the lines of communication open. That's going to be half the battle here, just maintaining ongoing communication home and school. And in this type of situation, or in these situations that we're discussing tonight, there has to be a lot of individualized support. If we don't know what's going to help, and the teachers will in most cases, but if they don't, it's important to communicate it. Okay, question about will PPE be provided in under extraordinary circumstances? Specifically mention N95 masks, gowns, gloves, shields, etc. And the idea, and I'll take this one, Diana, you can add to it. We will get, and it's from a teacher, we'll get you what you need for the individual situation that you're addressing. I do want to make a comment about the N95 masks. They have to be fitted. So you can't just walk in with an N95 mask. Our nurses will have them. Before school starts, we're actually holding a fitting so that our nurses are wearing N95 masks in the right way and they are fit to their faces. It's not like a cloth mask or a surgical mask where you can just put it on. They need to be fitted. So if that's needed, that has to be addressed separately. But as far as gowns, gloves, shields, those are not automatics, but can be provided for individual situations where they are needed. I hope that helps there. Okay, will the special education teacher be, Diana, you want to add anything there about
No.
Special equipment?
No, that was.
All right, also to mention about shields, that has come up before. If you're wearing a face shield, it's not okay by itself. We are providing them to our nurses and maybe in certain individual situations, but a face shield must be worn on top of a mask. It's open on the bottom, on the sides. It is not going to keep the aerosol particulates out. If it's worn, it has to be worn in addition to the mask. Okay, will the special education teacher be able to also provide online content and instruction in the integrated co-taught classes so the kids have support from them during the online learning days? I think we hit that one already.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to add there, Diana?
No, except the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what options will there be for children who typically are able to leave their classrooms for earned breaks, i.e. take a walk, sit in the hallway, go on an errand? And I'll start this, and Diana, you can kind of pick it up because I know there are individual circumstances that need to be addressed, but do understand that we need to know, A, they can't just be wandering the building. We need to know where they are at all times in the event that we need to initiate a contact tracing process. So some of these things may need to be modified to accommodate the situation. I'll let you pick that up from there.
So we know that many of our kids do need movement breaks, and some of those natural breaks are reinforcing for them. As Mr. Polanski said, we will have to, we can look to still try to incorporate them at the younger levels. They would be supported by a classroom aide or perhaps a paraprofessional that's working in the classroom. For the older students, though, we might have to look at other items that are reinforcing that would serve the same purpose and provide that same break or relief for them.
And just in terms of, I know that the concept of mask breaks comes up quite often. They will be built into the schedule. It may vary by class and setting. The kids need to be stationary and socially distanced when it happens, but please understand the default setting is the mask should be on. We know that it could be a little hotter in September, October, so flexibility needs to be there, but again, we need to make sure the masks, there's no experts on the coronavirus at this point, but there's enough out there to suggest that the masks can take away a great deal of the risk of aerosol particulates spreading around an indoor setting. So that the default setting, once again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it really does need to be on more often, most of the time. The breaks have to be few and far between, but appropriate for the age level and the class. Okay, there's a question about a clear mask. Does it fog for speech?
That does happen at times. We've tried numerous ones. These are actually double ply ones. We've researched the clear masks extensively. They're not perfect. It's not a perfect situation. We have to be flexible. I believe that we ordered the best ones in terms of safety and protection because they are a double ply. Others that we looked into were modified masks that a clear slip was placed into them. But I have to look into it again. There are ways to reduce the fog that occurs with them.
Thank you. Okay, how will the buses work for children requiring special transportation? I'll start with that piece of it, Diana, and you can continue. Special transportation is going to work with the same limitations that our large buses work. There is a load factor. The number of students on the bus and their individual needs is going to determine how many children can be placed on that bus. So there will be ample room, i.e. a van, for more than 6 foot social distancing. The students will be required to wear the masks on the bus. If there is a health condition on the bus where the mask cannot be worn, it'll mean there are fewer children on that bus to begin with. And adults on the bus would take a seat. So if there are a maximum of 8 or 9 on a van, the adult would take one of those seats. There's going to be fewer children on that van. And we will still encourage and actually require that students in the same family, coming from the same household, sit together on the bus because obviously the social distancing is not a concern there. Anything more on transportation, Diana?
No.
Okay. Where will the kindergarten self-contained class be held? It's not offered in this parent's, in his child's own school.
The kindergarten self-contained are going to be at Jefferson and Washington, but all parents should be aware of where their child is attending at this point. If that is not the case, which it does not appear to be, then I would ask that you contact my office tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you. I had the integrated class in my head, so I would have answered that incorrectly. All right, thank you for the note. And the question to follow, will there be variations with the specials from the IEP like last spring? For example, a number of weekly sessions mixed between group, single, and push-ins.
For special area classes, such
Yes.
as art,
music, phys ed, library.
Right. So we've been working with the principals on how to structure those classes for our special class students and our integrated students. I don't have the details on what each building looks like because each building has their own unique circumstances, schedules, etc. But if you do have a question about that and whether your child will be integrated with a general ed class, as they typically are for specials, we were looking at possibly breaking down some of the classes so that half of the kids would join one period for PE or art, whatever the case may be, and then another group of students would join another period. But those situations will be specific to the buildings and the number of students scheduled for those special area periods.
So it seems like an elementary question, and just know that we're going to emphasize push-in. That does not mean there won't be pull-out services, etc. There may be a situation where the pullout is the only way something is going to work, whether it be a service or otherwise. And there's also incidences where confidentiality could be breached if it wasn't a pullout. So just keep in mind the idea with most of your specials, however, we're going to push in as often as we can, limiting movement throughout the building. Okay, this is from a teacher. Will we, it's about notification about class rosters and those who have chosen to be totally remote. And the answer to that is you will be given all that information. It's going to come from your building principals. Understand today was the day that form is essentially closing for those who want to select fully remote. It will still be possible if you'd like to go from hybrid to remote. It's going the other way that will cause a delay and possibly we can't accommodate right away. But again, this is important for us because as of pretty much 6 o'clock tonight, we're going to finalize our rosters based on the numbers. And I will tell you that you saw the reminder come out this weekend. The staff doesn't know that. I sent that only to our families. We're dealing with about 20–25% who requested that, and we're going to do our best to make sure that they get exactly what they need as well. Okay. Question about a supply list. I know they are posted for each building. You may want to wait until the year begins for specifics from your child's teacher. Please understand that we will be very much reinforcing the idea to all children that they should not be sharing their pens, pencils, supplies, etc. This is something we're going to ask for your help with as well. Okay, I think this is a half a question. What happens is you get half a question and then the other half comes in another entry, and there's 2 or 3 in between. Something this has to do with a smart board with a camera in the class, given that there is only one. I don't see the other half of the question. Okay, can my child start the year with remote learning, then later switch to in-person? That may be much more difficult to accommodate right away. We will do the best we can to make those accommodations, but it may take time, and that's why we're asking for a commitment from you. Do you want this for a month? Do you want it for a quarter? Do you want it for half the year? Do you want it for the whole year? Obviously, if this ends, and heaven willing it will, but if not, like I said, we are planning our rosters and all of our procedures based on who's starting fully remote. So that may not happen right away. It may take some time. Okay. All right, this is specific to a situation, Diana, so I'm going to ask for your help here. If the IEP did not suggest a one-to-one for elopement risk, however, during the child's kindergarten screening, the child eloped from the PE screening and made it to the open front door. The teacher conducting the screening said that they would make note of it and suggest the one-to-one. Can the IEP be revised? So you can speak to that situation or just talk about IEP revisions and the process in general. And that's obviously a serious situation.
Yeah, absolutely. A parent or the student's team can request a CSE meeting at any time if there are concerns regarding the student's plan or a new circumstance, a new situation, new information, new data that the CSE would have to consider and look at whether or not changes to that IEP need to be made. So in short, yes, if there is concern that a student is in an elopement risk, and the student does not have a one-to-one or shared aid, then we can certainly reconvene the CSE. I can assure you that it's a behavior that's common to us, especially for younger students, and the buildings do have protocols in place for students that tend to want to escape the classroom. If you are aware that your child, and if that's a behavior that has occurred in the past during preschool, it should have transferred over to their kindergarten IEP. If that is not the case, then again, I would just ask that you reach out to myself or Valerie Collinger or Renee Vaughns to discuss that and determine if we need to hold a CSE meeting or not to take a look at whether the IEP needs to be revised.
Thank you. And again, individual situations like that, concerns about your child that go beyond some of the things we're talking about tonight, please do not hesitate to reach out and engage in that discussion on a more intimate basis. Okay, when a teacher decides to do a breakout room, how will they be able to accomplish that at the elementary level? And I can't promise that that's going to be easily accomplished depending on the lesson, maybe more appropriate in an integrated co-taught setting. I know Google is also enhancing its features, and we're waiting for some of the new features to come out. They're trying to compete with Zoom, so I know that they are adding some features that may facilitate that. I don't know if there's anything else that you can add, Diana?
Yeah. So those are some of the items that we had planned on our agenda over the conference days to discuss with the students, with the teachers, my apologies, with the teachers. There are multiple ways that we can do it. Again, part of that will be up to the teacher and the team on how to do that. Like you mentioned, I know that Google Classroom is incorporating a new breakout feature, and it's specifically for this purpose. So we will be discussing and addressing that on our conference days during the department meetings.
Okay, thank you. All right, this followed something that was said earlier by one of us, Diana, but again, there's so many things that come in the chat, rapid fire. But will that training be modified to go according to CDC COVID guidelines that may have related to the aid training? But please understand, everything we're doing right now is in the context of dealing with the COVID-19 circumstances. So this has been ongoing. So I'm assuming that that's what that refers to. Please do understand that the context is very similar based on what we've experienced and what we'll be experiencing, regardless of the training that's set up. Okay, so I was talking before about the form to be completed if you want full remote learning, and this question, so there's an email that you sent to parents to pick from distance learning from home. Can you clarify what does that really mean? So again, if you're completing that form, that means you do not want your child, at least for a period of time, in school at any point, and they're going to engage in the learning process from home every day. You don't have to fill out that form, and I think I included that in the communications across the board. If you're choosing hybrid, that's the default setting. You don't need to fill out any form. We only need to know if you'd like to keep your child home. And for our purposes, we have a student management system. Everybody on our end is color-coded. So what that means is if you're in a fully remote setting, it's going to appear to us that way. So we need to know that you're there, and if that's a decision you make at any point, that's something we need to know at the time. We need to know before you do that. So please keep us informed. But that's what that means. Distance learning from home, that means 5 days a week, full learning process engaged in from home, either screenshot, screen shared, or live stream from the classroom. Okay. Okay, will 1511 students, self-contained program, special class program be blended mainstream with general education students for specials, or will they remain in their own classroom or cohort? And I think that's a case by case. Diana, I'll let you take that.
Yeah, similar to what I had shared earlier, we were looking at ways to perhaps split the class if it was possible, to look at if the special area teacher can come to the self-contained class. We have to consider the safety measures that are in place and the cohorts. So those are individual situations that will I think better be answered given the situation in the different buildings. So if you do have a question about that, you can reach out to me or the building principal, and I think we would be able to better answer that for your child.
And again, it's not to push these questions aside, but when they really do involve specifics related to a child or a small group, they're better held individually, but we can give you a sense of what you're going to be looking at. All right, are there going to be buses for the kids that live close to the school? The transportation limits are the same as they've always been, so if you're a walker, you'll still be a walker, and if you are entitled to a bus, that bus will be there. Obviously, we are working very carefully to route so that social distancing can be accomplished. I know that there are parents out there that are not necessarily going to use the buses. They're going to drive their kids. You are absolutely not required to do that. And by law, we need to maintain your seats on the school bus. I know there are some districts out there that are asking parents if they plan to not use the bus and reroute accordingly. I have no choice until the law changes but to leave that seat for you no matter what. So please understand that that seat is there. You're going to be mapped out in that seat, regardless of whether or not you take the bus. And I have to tell you that our folks here and Huntington Coach have done a really terrific job in terms of mapping these routes out so that they are going to be ready to go. But again, asking for your patience at the beginning of the year like any other year, because there will be things that we have to tweak. Okay. Moving on to offices. Have therapist office rooms been reconfigured to meet state guidelines, i.e. sanitizing, air filtration, dividers, since students will be rotating in and out? It's not just therapist office. It's not just special education classrooms. Every room from top to bottom. We've measured. Desks will not be moved. They are stationary at this point because they have been distanced. We're doing all of the legwork, so when the teachers get here, they don't have to worry about putting furniture in places where it belongs. Ventilation has been addressed. Air filtration has been addressed. Sanitizers, whether it be the PPE or the sanitizing materials in the classroom or the physical barriers. I don't think I mentioned those before. Diane, you mentioned Lexan. These are actually a similar polycarbonate material. They are three-sided. I don't have one in here to show, but some of you have seen it before. Three-sided, translucent. They are flexible, so if a child falls into it, It'll just fall. There's no sharp edges, but they are there to catch any particulates. And we have more than one for a child or a desk in a classroom. Should one be soiled during a particular class, it can be replaced. Anything else you want to add there, Diana? Offices, rooms, reconfigurations?
No, other than just to add that, we have been working over the summer at looking all of the spaces. And at this point, the spaces have been determined that most of them can continue to be used. If it's a small group, though, there are situations in which the buildings are working on alternate spaces to provide small group services.
Thank you. Okay, this is from one of our staff members. I might need a little bit of a clarification here. If students stay home, can they join the asynchronous remote learning group? I'm not sure what that's referring to, but every student who's at home will have the same opportunity to participate in the instructional model that's in place for that class. Okay, how will the kids be seating in the bus or the school bus? Will it be cleaned every day? So the buses will be loaded in the morning, and again, we've got to be careful with our youngest students, and we have separate buses for UPK, by the way. It'll be a back to front or front to back load, front to back exit, so that there will be as little passing in the bus as possible. One per seat. Kids will need to wear masks. They will be cleaned following every set of morning routes, and obviously at the end of the day, they use cleaning materials that are appropriate for school districts, EPA approved, that are not toxic or caustic, but will in fact clean 99.9% of any virus that's out there. But the cleaning and disinfection both on buses and in school will be thorough on a daily, and in many cases more than a daily basis. So we're going to do the very best we can there. Okay, this is specific to speech. If a speech student needs some physical prompting from the speech teacher, will the speech teacher have gloves available in order to do this? And I'll say we will make the gloves available as needed. If they are needed for something specific in a classroom, we have them. It's not for general use per se, but if it's needed in a classroom, we'll have them there. Diana?
Yes, we do, and we have them, and we have used them over the summer periodically if needed for speech therapy. Yes.
Okay. All right, this is a general question, and I will take this one. What is the procedure if a student or staff member tests positive for COVID-19? So please understand, this is one of the reasons we are starting with the cohort model. So if a child or staff member or anybody in one of our buildings, in the building, tests positive, this is not, all right, let's start with that. So a student tests positive in a classroom, among the first things I will do, or the point person in the building, who is the principal, will do, is reach out to either myself or Dr. Acker. We are going to make a call to the Suffolk County Department of Health. We are going to speak to parents immediately. The students, anybody in contact with that child, is going to be asked to stay home. What will then happen is you'll receive a call from the Suffolk County Department of Health or designees suggesting a 14, not suggesting, but implementing a 14-day quarantine procedure. All right, that's going to follow a very, or as rapid as possible, a contact tracing process. So what we're going to do, and this is why attendance, bus attendance will be taken every day. Classroom attendance obviously taken every day. If a child goes to the bathroom, we need to know when, where, how, and not necessarily why, but everything else but that. We need to know where these kids are at all times so we can help the Suffolk County Department of Health trace exactly where that positive individual has been, and not just that day, but the 48 hours prior. Okay, so once that happens, in all likelihood, what's going to happen is anybody who's been around that child in school will need to quarantine for that 14-day period. So that's, I think, answers that question, procedure, student or staff, and we will partner with the Suffolk County Department of Health for the contact tracing process. And again, this relates to those in the building, not contacts of contacts. Okay, clarification requested, and please, if that's not thorough enough, throw something else into the chat, and I will be absolutely pleased to address it. In response to the co-teaching answer, how are the child's needs assessed when they are not in the classroom for 4 days?
So there are multiple ways. Typically, a goal assessment is every 2 weeks or monthly. So if
And just to
that is the
clarify,
case,
Diana, the 4 days, that has to be a secondary parent,
secondary
it's not an
student.
elementary parent.
Right. So I think there will be more information forthcoming regarding how classroom assessments will be conducted. Correct, Mr. Polanski?
Correct.
But if you are referring to Iep Goal Progress, typically students' goals are assessed anywhere from 2 weeks to monthly. So if that is the case, if it is on a monthly schedule, then once a week when the student is in school, their progress towards a particular goal can be assessed and determined how the student is doing, and that would be 4 data points there in that 1 month, and per quarter would be approximately 12 data points, and that would follow the schedule on the IEP. Again, as for typical classroom assessments, then that would, that more information about that will be forthcoming, and the process for that.
And pieces of that will come from the individual classroom teacher.
Right.
I think that the question was somewhat comprehensive just in terms of assessment, but I think you covered it all there. All right, do the kids have to wear a mask and face shields? They do not have to wear a face shield. They must wear a mask. And what will happen very shortly when you get the welcome package from your building principal, it will include a cloth mask, a 2-ply cloth mask in it. When I say 2-ply, I'm holding one. Notice I can pull the 2 layers apart. If it's only 1 layer, you can't do that. That's not the mask you want to have your child wearing. We will give you one of these. They are certainly washable, and if your child forgets, and please help them not forget, we will have surgical masks as backups in all sizes, obviously from kindergarten through adult sizes for older kids. But they do not have to wear face shields. This needs to be worn daily on the bus and in school and worn appropriately. This is a good solid cloth mask. It's got a little wire in the nasal area here, so it molds around the face, and it tightly covers, but comfortably covers, my nose and my mouth. And it's also got thick bands around my ears, which are, they don't all come like this. Some of them have thin strings. Those can be a little irritating, but we're going to get you one like this one. Okay. All right, specific to equipment, will the bicycle desk and or swing desk be available in classrooms for students that require flexibility throughout the day? And what process for sanitizing those desks need to be followed through the school day, or will the flexible seating accommodation have to be made in other ways?
So I think that those pieces of equipment are important, especially if they are on a student's IEP, that they need that. We will have to work together to discuss exactly what that process will look like with the teachers that have that equipment in their classroom, and for those students in there. It would have to be sanitized in between use, in my opinion, at least. So again, I'm not trying to be evasive, but these are really individual situations. We have to keep the lines of communication open. We want students to have access to that equipment and material if they need it, but we also have to have a specific protocol in place to make sure that it's safely being used.
Okay, thank you. And please understand that everything at the end of every day is going to be completely and thoroughly cleaned and sanitized. The reason we are working with Tuesday, at the elementary level anyway, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday cohorts is so that there is no mixing of the cohorts alternating between days. Again, to prevent that cross-pollination, cross-contamination of the 2 cohorts, but thorough cleaning and sanitizing every day. And that includes things like bicycle desks and swing desks. Okay, just a suggestion, you can put the same film you use as a glass protector on your phone that will stop any fogging. And I have to say, I was thinking the same thing. I was putting in the context of, I used to play hockey and wear a clear shield on my head, and if you didn't put the fogger on there, it would fog up very quickly. Anything we use obviously has to be EPA approved, but that's something I'm going to ask our facilities director about. Thank you for that. Okay, another suggestion on the same platform, and I'm going to jot this down as we speak. On the Today Show last week, they promoted the first FDA-approved clear mask. It is called the Clear Mask. They all wore them on the show, and they did not fog. Okay. And it looks like Clear Mask with a capital C and a capital M and one word.
Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, there's a break between the question and the follow-up. I meant speech, OT, and PT. All right, for students doing strictly virtual, will the parent just need to work out with the service providers, OT, PT, speech, and teachers, the student being able to have their session without falling behind? Would that just fall into the time set for students to be able to reach out for help from teachers? So I think this has to do with a lot of the services being offered while the child is in school, and therefore missing time in the classroom, et cetera. So I'm going to let you address that, Diane.
Yes. Yes. So that is one of the components that will affect our scheduling this year, are the students that are remaining fully virtual. So the individual providers will be in contact with the teachers and then with the parents and students to determine what that virtual related service therapy will look like, which periods, what times, and when those will occur.
Okay. I just lost my place here. Or do self-contained blended students have the ability to do remote learning? So I know you've been working this out, Diana, as best you can. Can you speak to that?
So some parents some students of parents that are scheduled to attend every day have requested that they attend hybrid and not every day. That is an option that we can accommodate if the parent is more comfortable with that. But we would have to be made aware that that is what you are selecting, because it impacts transportation and it impacts the classroom structure, and it impacts other related services. It impacts, there's a trickle effect there. There's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. So we would have to know what your intention is if you do not want to send your child to school every day.
Our goal here is to accommodate anything and everything as best we can, with, again, safety and flexibility as our core guiding principles. We also want to provide the kids with the sound education here, with the appropriate level of rigor, challenge, and support. But again, first and foremost, we've got to ease these kids back in. Okay, assuming the current hybrid plan and cohorts were based on number of students in building versus square footage, which is absolutely correct. As more students request the full distance learning model, can you please consider having IEP students who request it have more than one day in the building? And this goes back, again, this goes back to the secondary setting. It's not that way, quite that way in the elementaries. And that is among the goals here. So in terms of phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, the three things that we are looking at first and foremost is what's going on around us with this virus. We're looking at metrics both regionally and locally. I can't tell you what's going to happen 2 weeks from when we open. It is possible, and we need to be prepared for this, it is possible that something could happen to increase the incidence in the community, in the region, which is Long Island. The governor has designated regions. Long Island is a region unto itself. If something spikes, it is possible that we will have to shut it down altogether and flip to a full distance learning model for the district, which is slightly different than, in terms of the schedule anyway, than what we're starting with. I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm throwing it out there because we need to be prepared for anything. If things are going well and the numbers stay low, the positive test rate stays low, that's one of the considerations that we will have in mind in considering a phase change. The other is how well we are implementing we've pressure tested our protocol, safety protocol. It's working. Students are social distancing. They are wearing their masks. The physical barriers are doing their job. Everything is working as planned. That will contribute. And the last factor is what this parent mentioned, the number of students who are participating in a fully remote manner. That may alter our plan in a positive way for a specific grade level, or for students who are most in need. We're going to look at everything. So the answer is we will absolutely consider it. I just can't make promises because there are certain variables here that we cannot predict, but we're going to look at it routinely. Thank you for that. It allowed me to elaborate on it. Okay, I think we answered this already. Given there's one smartboard with camera in a class, when a teacher decides to do a breakout room, how will they be able to accomplish this at the elementary level? I think we got that one already. Thank you. Thank you for the note. All right, in the last meeting, it was mentioned that the first 2 weeks of school will be screen sharing only in order to test bandwidth capacity. Can students have Zoom sessions with their special ed teacher during these 2 weeks, maybe during study hall or lunch? Okay, just to clarify, I know where the parent is going here. This is all Google. Zoom is, we're using Zoom tonight. Teachers are not using Zoom for their classes. And what this parent is referring to is we talked about screen sharing. The camera is on the smartboard. we do want to make sure that, because there's going to be a lot of people in the area doing similar things, not every district is doing live streaming or live streaming. I hope nobody's screaming. Live streaming or screen sharing. Some will be going in different directions. The screen sharing does not use as much bandwidth. So what that means is you'll see what's on the smartboard, you'll have full audio access to the class, and as time goes on, there can be some flexibility for the teacher to move it about and move around a bit so that there are certain things that they can display in the classroom at their discretion. And obviously, many are chomping at the bit to get to that, and some may not need it. But the question, Diana, can students have Zoom sessions or Google sessions with their special ed teachers, maybe during study hall or lunch? I don't know if we've made accommodations for that, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can certainly look into it or explore it, but the teachers teach on a period by period schedule. So while one student is at study hall, the teacher is most likely teaching another class of students in which, you know, they won't be able to accommodate every schedule or every request. So I don't know that is possible, but, you know, we will work together as a team, a special ed team, to determine if there are times that students need small group or additional support, and how that can be done, but it will likely be during class time, not during a study hall or off period. And really, I mean, that's because teachers have obligations throughout the day.
This is going to be a very busy schedule for teachers and staff as well. So they're going to have to take their breaks, and that, if they don't, they're not going to be as effective. And that goes for all of us, really. So, you know, they need to have that time just to regroup, to plan, to prep, etc. Okay, thank you for the note. It's our pleasure to do this. Who should I reach out to regarding specific 504 accommodation questions, concerns for a secondary student? So 504 is under the jurisdiction of my assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, who I believe is on tonight. That's Beth McCoy. You can reach out to her directly, or you can contact the building principal, because they are intimately involved in any setup of 504 accommodations. So you may want to start there at the building level. The principals they've been in and out all summer long, but they are informally as of today, so you can reach out to them more sooner than later. I know it's a busy time for everybody. And obviously, if there's a special education concern, you can reach out to Mrs. Roth, Ms. Roth, Ms. Collinger, Ms. Vaughns, or Ms. Rich herself. Okay, this is a staff question. Have desktops been removed from shared offices? I don't believe that is the case. Everything is being cleaned and scrubbed routinely. All right, can parents bring you to school if you don't have a bus? Absolutely. They just can't walk in the building. Child will have to be either picked up by a staff member or walk a short distance from where you're dropping them off into the building, and that's going to be a case-by-case situation depending on the needs of the child and possibly an IEP. Okay, you're very welcome. Okay, for cohort groups and co-teaching environments, if your child is sick for an in-school day, can you easily dial in for online instruction? How would that work? So this, I'm going to answer it generically, because the answer is the same regardless of special education, general education. If you are not in school on a given day, you can treat it like one of your remote days, and you can do the same thing you would do on one of those remote days and still be present in that classroom. Attendance will be based on either presence in the classroom on one of your in-school days, or presence remotely on any day. So we want the kids in school if they're not sick, but if they wake up late or there's something going on in the house and they're not sick, but they stay home that day, they can still participate in school from home and be marked present and still complete all the work and get everything they need. So generically speaking, the answer is yes, you can easily sign on as you would on any remote day. That's a better question. Have desktop computers been removed from shared offices, or will they remain? I was trying to figure out how we were going to take those desktops off, so forgive me. Are phone calls with parents and school phones or personal devices? So this is really a staff conversation, but the desktop computers will remain in shared offices, and there will be ample supply in there to wipe down keyboards, screens, etc. So there is work that needs to be done. We recognize that, and we do know that our staff members get along very well. There will be the hand sanitizer, there will be the keyboard wipes, there will be antiviral wipes in there that are safe for use in any setting in the school building. Phone calls with parents, same thing. You can use a district phone, wipe it down. I don't necessarily encourage using personal devices, but in certain situations, there are ways that you can do that as well. You've got to feel comfortable. Just keep in mind that the cleaning materials will be available to any staff member, anybody in the building on a consistent basis. Okay, somebody's spying for Dr. Bossert. That's okay. Neighboring superintendent, friend of mine. Okay. And you're very welcome. Okay, what is required of students to return to school if they were sent home due to quarantine? Do students who are required to quarantine become remote learners, and how quickly does that happen? Okay, so I'm going to direct you to a piece of the plan here. There is a section on return to school, return to work protocol. And you'll notice that most of that does, if you're sent home, if you're quarantined, the Suffolk County Department of Health at the end of that 14-day quarantine period, I'm going to tell you what they've told me, that they are going to provide you with documentation indicating that your quarantine has ended, and you would provide that upon your return to the school. If something goes awry there on their end, just due to the number of cases, which I'm not going to say can happen, we'll have an alternate procedure in place, or we'll tell you exactly what you need to do. So I'm assuming that this is somebody who's asymptomatic and is coming back at the end of a quarantine period. If symptoms are there, if there is something that needs to be addressed medically, among the first things that need to be done is a visit to a healthcare provider. We will either ask for a negative COVID test result or a note from a medical professional, a healthcare provider, that indicates that what the child has is something other than COVID-19. It has to be from a true to form healthcare professional. So we're trying to protect those that are well in the buildings. We need something that acknowledges that you're not going to infect upon returning. And this applies to both staff, students. It applies to myself, if that makes it any better. It doesn't, but we're all involved here. Okay. Do students who are required to quarantine become remote learners? If they're quarantined and they're healthy, they quickly become remote learners right away. They can start logging on the next day as if they're on one of their remote days in general. So it happens instantaneously. The only time we'd really need to know if something more permanent is in place is if you choose, okay, you know what, I'm not comfortable, I'm not happy with the in-school setting, I'm going to go to full remote. We do want to note that in the in our student management system, so we have it on record, and the child is coded accordingly. That just helps us know where everybody is at all times, and we wouldn't expect them to come back to school. But the quarantine period, right to remote, it should work quickly. Okay, thank you very much. I can't tell you we don't like the positive feedback, but we also want to know where we can help more as well. But thank you for that. Okay, can you maybe mention to parents that video recording the teacher while teaching isn't appropriate? Okay, so there is one of the things that is going to go home with the welcome back to school and entry packet is a set of distance learning expectations. English and Spanish, everything is laid out. One of the things that we have to emphasize is obviously, particularly in this area in terms of confidentiality, we need your cooperation. If something is being delivered remotely, please do not record that session under any circumstance. That's not what it's there for. Okay, there'll be ways that you can speak to the teacher and get something you missed, but recording is not the way to do it. Okay. You're welcome. And also, just to add additional emphasis there, we know that parents, and listen, we know this has been difficult on you, it's been difficult on everyone, and we know how much you want to help your child. But when the teacher is teaching and they are at home remotely, be there for them. You don't necessarily need to be on the camera. Okay, meaning that this is for the child. We want your support there every step of the way. We want to provide our support every step of the way. But it's important that you recognize that the learning situation is for the student. Thank you. Okay, can special class teachers have a calm down corner break area available for students if disinfected after each use? And I do not see any problem with that as long as the social distancing concepts are not compromised. Okay, and that's obviously from a teacher. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. You just need to know how much I and my colleagues appreciate this community. This is not easy, and everybody understands that, and they understand that we are not working in a vacuum here, that this is a collaborative effort throughout the community, so thank you for that. Can the students in 1511 work remotely on days they aren't feeling well, even though they're in 5 days? I have my answer to that, but I don't want to step on toes here, Diana, so can you address?
Well, I think that will depend in part if there are students in the classroom that are selecting fully remote or not, and if or if all the students in that class are attending. It's something that we would like to accommodate if possible. Mr. Polanski, did you have a different answer?
No, my only thought was that if the remote is set up, it would be an easy transition
Exactly.
from one. That's why I let you start there, because you're right. If there is a 1511 where everybody's in and there is no reason to have the remote set up, that would be a different story. So thank you for that. My head was in a different place. Okay. Are the students' daily health questionnaires digitally submitted or on paper? And the answer is there will be an app for this, and the app is connected. It's a Frontline app, and that means nothing to parents, but we use Frontline for a number of different things, and it feeds right into our student management system. So what that means is right now for all of the 12-month employees, I set up personally a Google form. So each day, and I got to tell you that sometimes I forget. Each day we log in, it shows all the things that we want to know are no answers, and at the end, did you answer no to all these questions? I click, that's the case, and move on. If the answer to any of those questions is yes, I don't come to work. So what does that mean? That means I don't have a fever of over 100.0 degrees Fahrenheit. I haven't tested positive for COVID. I don't have any symptoms. I have not been in contact with anybody who's tested positive, and I have not traveled to any of the forbidden states or countries at this point. That list changes daily. We've got to be careful with that, particularly as parents. This would not be 2 days before school starts would not be the time to visit North Carolina, because when you come back, you and your family are going to have to quarantine. That said, all of those questions have to be answered. It will be an app that can be set up on the phone, multiple languages, and it's a quick click and go. If you come into the building and you haven't filled out the app, or if you have answered yes to any of those questions, that's going to feed into the student management system. We have to fall into a routine here. So I can't promise perfection right from the start, but you will be flagged very quickly. And if the student is at the door, they will be isolated and sent home. If they haven't answered the questions, that's going to make it a lot more difficult for us in terms of the process that we're engaging in. So we're trying to make this as simple as possible. So long-winded answer, digitally submitted. If a quarantine includes a teacher, do they provide the distance learning to the students, or do the students get a sub for the teacher? And in all likelihood, it will be a substitute. Okay. I'm sorry, I think I'm getting more wordy as time goes on, so forgive me. Okay, I think that may have been the last question, because I rolled up back to 7:01. It's not even that small a group tonight. I'm sure a number of people here have been present at some of our others. Okay, I got another one that just came in. All right, how would my child attend if they are both 15, if they are in both? All right, so Diana, this is a blended 1511 and integrated. Would they attend just in their cohort day and then come in person, or just for the 1511 so they aren't exposed to multiple groups? I'm going to let you address that one.
No, we did schedule our blended students to attend every day, but you do have the option, if you don't want them to attend every day, for them to attend with their cohorts if you don't want them to come in every day.
Okay. All right, if we are to err on the side of keeping our child home if they have symptoms, then doesn't the remote learning need to be set up in every room, even if there are no regular remote learners? If the remote is not set up, will the day a sick child misses become an absence? All right, so that obviously that's something that we are going to be setting up in every room. I just don't want to speak to the individual circumstances in a special class setting where the learning is done typically on an in-person basis. Did you understand that question? I mean, the suggestion there is is absolutely valid. But the idea is if we don't have the remote learning set up in a special class, if that child stays home because of symptoms, then they wouldn't have access. So can you address a situation like that?
Right. So I think that we do have to be prepared in all situations and in all classes, regardless. I think we will be equipped in all of the classes. I think it's just going to be a matter of transitioning that process. I can discuss that with the teachers next week and what that will look like once we have a better idea of who's coming every day, who's not coming every day. You know, we're just in the process of compiling all of that information, and the teachers will be provided with that as well when they return. But I anticipate that there will likely be at least one student in every setting that has elected either remote or hybrid, which will necessitate that the classroom is live streamed with that remote option.
So to answer, every classroom will be fitted that has a smart board, and that really pertains to just about everything except for a couple of special areas, i.e. in the phys ed environment, they take them outside, and even there they'll have jetpacks where they can still do some of the remote, still engage some of the remote learners. Every smart board will be fitted with the camera. There will be that capacity in every classroom. It's just a matter of being ready to do it if the situation presents itself. So thank you to that parent. Okay, I think I have everything covered in the chat. I just received an email and I happen to be looking at it. Please submit in the chat, but this is a question. On an event, a child in a special classroom, they attend 5 days per week and they have to, 1 or 2 days, need to attend via remote learning. How will it, this is the same kind of question. How will attend remotely if they typically won't learn remotely? I don't know if this is an individual situation for a child or just the situation we referred to. So like I said, we'll have the capacity in every room. It's just a matter of being ready to do that. And I think that that is something that we can easily address. Okay. I think we've addressed everything that has been submitted. Another minute here if anybody would like to add on or clarify. I'm just going to emphasize that we are trying this has been an extraordinary effort across the board. We are trying our very best to leave no stone unturned. That does not mean every child, there's not going to be a question that comes up or something that we may be able to do to help even more within our means. If it's there and possible, we'll find a way to do it. Just please remember that we are partners. We are working through this together, and we want to be here for your kids. I can tell you I have the staff. I mentioned it before. I'll mention it again. We have the staff here to do that as well. It's just, again, keeping the line of communication open from beginning to end, and that's what's going to make this work. So, you know, there may be frustrations. I get it. I experience them every day myself. I also have 2 kids. They're older, but it's been an experience and a half. My daughter going into her senior year of college, this is not what she wanted either, but it's something we all have to deal with and we all have to get through together. So communication is an essential part of anything we do here. Diana, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just wanted to reiterate that same sentiment in that we have an amazing department, an amazing team, really dedicated, enthusiastic, skilled, talented professionals that are, you know, ready and equipped, that will be ready and equipped to face the school year. And again, just to keep the lines of communication open, please reach out to us with any questions. Please, you know, I just ask that you do so, you know, as soon as you can, so that your questions or concerns don't linger and that we can address them as quickly as possible. And I'm just grateful and thankful for everything that we have here in Huntington, for the community, for working with, you know, all of my colleagues, with Mr. Polanski and the administration. For SEPTA, I do want to thank SEPTA. You know, they're a very supportive group as well. And I, like Mr. Polanski said, I don't want to repeat exactly what you said, but it is true. We will get through this. There will be challenges, there will be ups and downs, but we're here to work together. And we all have the same common goal for your kids, and we all want them to be successful this school year and every school year.
My thanks to SEPT as well. I'm looking at Renee. Thank you, Renee. We had 90-something people on tonight, so good call. And we're happy to do this whenever it's needed. A couple of other comments came in. Another comment about the clear mask again, used in Connecticut. Search gave me some information on how to find that. Thank you for that. A staff question, I think for the benefit of others, did school schedules remain the same? And that is a very good question. So yes, schools start times, unless we go full district remote and have to flip to that, which I hope we don't, but again, we need to be ready. But school schedules under the hybrid circumstances, and that includes anybody who's full remote while hybrid is in place, the school schedules are the same. That means primary from 9:20 to 3:40, intermediate 8:45 to 3:05, Finley, oh my goodness, 7:55 to 7:50 to, oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank here, stay with me. 8:05 to 2:55 in the high school, 7:30 to 2:20. Okay, so that is what you've experienced all along. Thank you very much for the kind words. Thank you also, Mr. Schwendeman, appreciate it. I called him out because I think he's seen every one of these. Okay. Thank you, thank you. All right, Dr. Fletcher, I hope I covered those school hours comprehensively. One thing I will remind, we decided not to send out the print district calendar this year, and a lot of this information is in there, PTA information, the school hours, et cetera. And the reason we're not doing that is because there are so many events up in the air. To put it out there and then have to pull everything back and say it's not happening, it is happening. We're going to do this one page at a time. I'm going to do some of the work this week on the school calendar and get something posted. The interactive calendar is also going to be active, but I did want to explain why for the time being there is no print calendar going home. There's just too much there that may have to be pulled back. Okay. Thank you, thank you. You guys are terrific. Thank you so much. All right, so we're here. If anything else comes up, do not hesitate to drop an email, pick up the phone. Diana and her staff, I couldn't ask for any more from that department across the board. Teachers, aides, staff, teaching assistants, they're all fantastic. So everybody's in good hands. We just need to get through this, and that we will do. So once again, thank you all, and we will see you very soon.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, all.